This is the Above Average Podcast, and you are listening because you want an above average life. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Above Average Podcast, the podcast where we talk to above average people about their above average lives. Now, my guest today is a former owner of a haberdashery. I was scared I was going to butcher that word. Turned neuroscience master who empowers individuals to unlock their full potential by upgrading their mindset and optimizing their brain health. She's here today to quite literally blow your mind. Please welcome Amy Porter to the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, are you excited to do this?
I am, yes.
Yeah, so this is an area that I am so out of my depth on. It's not something I've discussed. I know probably some of the basics. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it's a little bit more than the average person, but I'm completely out of my depth, so I'm excited to really get the information out of you today. So let's take it back to the beginning. So your story of how you came into the neuroscience field is very much connected to your son, Ben.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell me about how that all started with Ben, what happened sort of not long after he was born.
Okay, so he's 19 now, soon going to be 20, so long time ago. When he was born, absolutely fine, didn't think anything was wrong.
Yeah.
When he was about 7 months old, I was getting a little bit concerned that he wasn't using his right arm.
Mm-hmm.
He was moving it, but wasn't moving it like his left arm. So we went to the hospital, and I can remember them lying on his bed, and they were checking his reflexes in his knee. And straight away you could see that he'd got no reflex on his knee on his right side. So at that point, they thought he'd had a stroke. So it's a little bit like, I was 24 years old, and I'm thinking, like, strokes are for older people.
Yeah.
But straight away they said, right, we're going to put him to sleep and put him in an MRI machine to see what's going on. And I can always remember the nurse that took us in said, well, we'll have the scan done, and then we'll let you know the results in about a week's time. But when they brought him out of the scan, they said, the doctor will see you now.
Shit.
And they told us he had something called a porencephalic cyst, which is a very rare brain condition. And it's not actually a cyst. It meant that 40% of the left hemisphere of his brain was actually missing.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite a shock. So we'd gone from that morning thinking it was a stroke to a few hours later, this really rare brain condition where he'd, like, 40% of his brain wasn't there. So that left him with cerebral palsy, and shortly after that he started with epilepsy, which was heartbreaking. And over the years he kept getting immune to medication, and then the seizures would start again. And then, you know, he was on that much medication, like there was 3 medications he was on, but it was 15 tablets a day.
Jesus.
Yeah, so when he was 15 years old, he had like 15 seizures in one morning. So
what? How did that impact you when you were first told that 40% of his brain isn't working? What sort of support did you have around you at that time? Like, what kind of went through your head as well?
So it was pure shock, and luckily we had all the neurologists, everybody involved, so that was quite calming. But because Ben was so young, they couldn't say exactly what his disability would look like until he started growing. The good thing I'd always said, though, because it was so rare, they didn't actually know. They didn't think he would walk or talk because that side of the brain wasn't there. So it was slightly easier for me because I couldn't look back on other people's experiences with it.
Yeah, there's no reference to pull from.
Yeah, so it made it easier for me. It's like, well, this might be able to happen. You might be able to do this. So I was very wary when Ben was growing up of people saying, well, he won't be able to do this or he can't do this. We went with, let's see what he can do rather than what he can't. But there was times where, you'd have a period where he's doing well, and then all of a sudden they'd find a problem with his eyes. So it was like, right, okay, what's
the next thing that comes? Yeah,
so we've had a lot of highs and lows with him growing up and finding kind of new issues that have come to light. But then you look at it, the positive side, he does walk, he does talk very well, and doesn't shut up. So yeah, there's definitely been highs and lows.
So what was the day to day like when you get him home after you find out, you take him home, you sort of, the day to day life? What sort of care are we talking about here?
So at that time, like I say, he was still only 7 months old, so it wasn't that different from a normal 7-month-old. I mean, he wasn't crawling or sitting unaided or anything like that. But our lives, the only way I can describe it is it's like a grieving process. Because when you have a child, you start to think about, schooling and them growing up, and all of a sudden that had literally stopped because we'd got a different path to go on.
Yeah.
And I can always remember the health visitor. They have like these red books and they mark milestones in children's development. I can remember the day after that happening, and she came and she chucked this book in the bin and said, "We don't need to go by this now. We've got a different journey to take." That was quite a lonely moment because I couldn't resonate with anybody like around me.
Like other mums and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So that was quite hard because like Ben's next steps was completely different to everybody else's. So, but luckily we had an amazing medical team because it was such a rare kind of condition. Everybody took notice.
You obviously must have gone home and like Googled this, for example, or try to look up. Was there, what kind of things did you find? Like anything at all?
So because they at that point they didn't know much about it, it didn't look like it was a good prognosis at all. Many people that had it, I could find about 5 people.
Yeah.
None have really made it into like teenage years, and Ben's was the largest that neurology had ever seen.
That must have been scary to hear that, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's strange because obviously I don't have kids myself, but you kind of, when you start to think about them, you start to think like, well, I want them to be able to do this and this and that, and that was kind of, it was taken away from you a little bit. Like, did you have like, was it just, obviously you go, what's the next step? Am I going to be able to do this? Like, did you sort of just drop everything, or did you still hope that you could do all these other things that you had in mind for him?
We had to stop doing that. Because I think as a parent, you were always future thinking. Yeah. So now we had to go back to present day thinking, like what can he do today? What can he learn today? What can we overcome today? Is there any medical person we need to contact? So it literally went from future thinking to, it brings you very present.
So eventually there was a decision made to remove part of his brain. When did that come about, and what was the prognosis for that?
Yeah, so that was when he was 15, the morning he'd had the 15 seizures. The hospital we'd gone to, you could kind of see their worried faces, like they couldn't do any more.
Yeah.
So they contacted Nottingham Hospital, who specialise in things like that. They came in, they decided they couldn't do anything, so the last attempt was Birmingham Hospital. And they were like, yeah, we can help. We can help. So we had to go into, bear in mind this is when COVID was happening as well.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. So we spent a week in Birmingham Hospital where they literally took him off all his medication. So bearing in mind, I'd not seen him without any medication, and that was an experience.
What happened?
So Ben was always quite slow talking. So you could put a lot to his condition, but then the medication had a massive impact on like how he spoke, like his concentration. So they literally took us in. They took him straight off his medication, wired him all up, video cameras all around him, because what they needed to see is where exactly the seizures were happening, which part of the brain. And within 3 days, he'd started having loads of seizures, and they got what they needed. But within 3 days, it was like you could see a massive change in Ben. All of a sudden, he'd become really chatty. He'd gone from sleeping quite well to 2 o'clock in the morning asking me what the weather was going to be like. And they're just all random, like completely different. And I can remember the surgeon at the time saying, oh, yeah, they're very different when they come off the meds. It's surprising how much it alters somebody's personality and their attention and everything. I was like, wow, that's shocking. But at that point, that's when the surgeon said to me, we can do something. It's a major operation where we're going to remove the 10% left in that hemisphere, so he's only going to have half a brain. Because what was happening is the signals were bouncing back and forward where the hole was. and that's where the seizures were.
Right, yeah, because there's nowhere further signals to go.
Yeah. So they were just clashing into each other. So we had to wait a year for that. Again, that was partly because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Ben underwent a major 10-hour operation to remove the last 10% of that part of the brain.
But he had the best reaction to being
did.
told that anyone could have possibly had. What was his reaction when he got told that?
Yeah, so because Ben was hurtling to an age where he was, seen as a young adult, all the details were made available to him.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where he was like, there's an 85% success rate with this operation. And he was like, I want to give it a go. There was no ifs, buts, that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is with Ben's condition anyway, the memory centre was affected by the cyst, wasn't there? So Ben had short-term memory problems. So long-term, like a photographic memory, short-term, really, really bad. And one of the things they couldn't work out is whether some of the short-term memory was in this 10% they were going to take out.
Right, okay, yeah.
So even though functional MRI scans are really good, they couldn't 100% say whether it would be affected. So it was a little bit of a worry.
Yeah.
But the great thing was when the morning that we was going to the operation, all he kept saying, we'd already agreed that the 10% of the brain was going to be sent to medical science. Like, he'd signed the form and everything, and then he was like, oh, do you think they'll give me a bit just to take home in a jar? And I can remember it so well because I'm just thinking, that's awful. Can you imagine having to dust around a shelf and pick a jar?
Just dusting underneath casually. Yeah.
I'm just like, oh no, mate, I don't think that's a good idea. And he's going, well, you ask him. And I was like,
it's just floating around in brine on a shelf.
Yeah.
When you said that to me, it was I just pictured that scene in is it Frankenstein where they go through all the? I was just like, whoa.
Yeah, and I was just like, yeah, your brain's amazing, but I'm not sure about how I'd feel with some in a jar.
Yeah.
But he said that literally as we're walking towards like the surgical bit, and I was like, I don't think we'll do it. But anyway, they put him under it, and for 10 hours is a long, long time for somebody to be asleep for.
Yeah.
So there was always a little bit of a chance that if they couldn't wake him up properly, he might have to go in intensive care, and they didn't really want to do that. So after the 10 hours, the surgeon came out and said it's been absolutely a success, but he's not waking up properly. Can you come into the room and just to see if you can stir him if he hears your voice?
Yeah.
So it's like I've got a really vivid memory of that moment because I walked in and my first thought was it was horrific. How he looked was just horrific. Got tubes, his head bandaged up. I mean, it's just one of those things where you just never want to see. But I'm like, come on, Ben, wake up. And he just opened his eyes. He says, have you got my jar? And I was standing there and I just burst out laughing. And the anaesthetist looking at me like, why is she laughing? I said, he can remember. And that's all I thought. I was, God, he's got his memory. So that, for me, was a huge win because as a parent, the thought of him waking up and not remembering who you are, or he couldn't remember, like, his family or things like that was just, like, it was a big worry for me.
Well,
so
it would become, like, a completely different sort of care if his memory was affected, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So that moment was just, like, the icing on the cake after 10 hours of just pacing up and down.
God, so obviously I'm guessing you're in the hospital at this point, you're outside for these 10 long hours.
Well, no, the neurosurgeon actually said to me, I don't want you to stay in the hospital for 10 hours. I need you to walk around because we need you to be calm because he's going to need you to be calm afterwards. So I thought it was very odd. I walked thousands and thousands of steps in the 10 hours. I can't really remember much of the 10 hours, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But he said, if you stay in here, you're going to drive yourself insane. Yeah. So it's like, we've got your number. If we come out early or there's any problems, we can ring you straight away. So
yeah. So removing that part of the brain, did it? I'm guessing it's obviously stopped the seizures, right? Did it affect anything else?
2 years on, he's had no seizures. The risk was as well with the operation that he would be in hospital for 6 weeks and it would take him 12 months to walk. So it was a little bit like we was putting plans into place because, of course, at home we've got stairs and things like that. Yeah. But we thought, right, we've got six weeks anyway, so we can start planning that. But dramatically, Ben walked after 3 days. He was up and down the stairs at the hospital.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And he was discharged after 7.
You had no time to repair. You were like, oh, I guess we're straight away. Cheers, Ben.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where, great, he's coming home. Oh, no, he's coming home. What if something goes wrong? We're 40 minutes away from Birmingham. So, yeah, it was really good, but really scary. But, yeah, it was that moment 3 days afterwards, and it's just like all the medics are just standing there going, right, okay, he's got up and he's walking.
Well, it is like a medical miracle, isn't it? When you hear about it, like if someone's given 12 months to walk and they're like, I'm up in 3 days, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's mad. What I love about it as well is the fact that not only does he now walk fine, he also does boxing and jiu-jitsu. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, no.
Yeah, with one arm.
Yeah.
Honestly. But I look back at Ben's life, the whole, nearly 20 years, and they've always said, right, it'll take him longer to do this, or he won't be able to do this. And he's just completely gone against the grain in everything that is said.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite remarkable. And it's like with the memory now, with the jiu-jitsu especially, there's so many moves with the names to the moves.
Yeah.
And you can remember all of them. It's fascinating.
That's crazy. I mean, I can't even do jiu-jitsu with 2 arms, and I mean, I've got 2 left feet, granted, but I think it's just incredible. When I was hearing that, I was like, that is something that needs to be on TV. Do you know what I mean? Like Ben is a legend. Let's hear this now, audience. Ben is a legend. He's gonna beat you up. But I think it does sound like something that should be recorded on a TV show. So maybe that's where he's heading in the future. Yeah. Who knows? Movie star. Yeah.
He's very humble. Like people will come up to him and say, "Oh, well, you're really inspiring," and he can't see it.
He's like, "Stop it."
Yeah. He's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Oh, mate."
He's like, "Oh, guys, stop it. I'm blushing." So have you tried to join in any of these sports with him? Does he tackle you down in jiu-jitsu? Or?
Do you know what? I did actually do karate with him, and I got my first belt.
Nice.
Yeah, that was last year.
Did he train you well? Was it like Miyagi and Daniel-san? Was it?
Yeah. I think he just blackmailed me into quitting. It was like, I was like, I can't do that. And he's like, Mum, you've always told me that I can do everything if I put mind to it. And I'm like, he's got me there, hasn't he? Yeah,
you can't really get out of that then, can you? When kids recite your own advice back, that was probably one of my favourite things about when I started becoming, I was 15, 16, and I was like, I'm going to start growing into sarcasm, and I'm going to start reciting things back at my parents. And you just see their faces go, they can't get out of it, can they? You know what I mean? So after this, when did you make the decision that you wanted to really start to learn about the brain, start to learn about neuroscience? Obviously, you've dealt for all these years with all the doctors and neuroscience, everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've heard all this information. You probably got countless leaflets and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. You've picked up stuff as you go. But when did you decide to really sort of hone in on that?
Right. So literally, it was 2 months after Ben was discharged from hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Mum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I'd spent all these years around these people that are going, brains are fantastic, you can rewire them to do this, and, we can do this, and if you do exercise, this will happen. And then all of a sudden, I'd seen it from a different light. So this was where the brain has stopped doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until that happened, and I was just like, how is this possible? And we'd literally gone locally, I don't know whether this is UK wide, but we'd gone to a Living Well programme, and there they spoke a lot about what you can do to prolong Alzheimer's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there was lots of good information there. But then we went to the Alzheimer's Society and it's a group meeting for everybody with Alzheimer's and the carers.
Yeah.
And one day we'd walked in, and this is how stereotypical my brain was. There was an older lady that walked in with a chap like my age, so mid-40s. So I automatically assumed that was her son taking his mum to the Alzheimer's Society. Mm. But it wasn't her that got Alzheimer's, it was him.
Mm.
And it was like, wow. Right, so the Alzheimer's Society are very quick to say Alzheimer's isn't an old person's disease, and 1 in 20 get it under the age of 65. But to actually meet somebody,
it gives you. Then you see it. It's different when you see it. Yeah.
because you often think, well, that's probably really, really, really rare.
Mm-hmm.
And then you work out that it actually isn't. So my fascination began with, well, how can this happen when the brain's so amazing at regenerating and rewiring?
Yeah.
Where does it go so wrong? And that's where, when I got into brain coaching and like the whole neuroscience, and I just found it fascinating.
So you really picked up with Alzheimer's, is kind of where it started. Yeah. So, how long ago was that? Was that 4 years now? Is that?
3 years. Yeah.
3 years. Yeah. So one thing that when you mentioned this about Alzheimer's, so my grandma actually, it was the only person I've ever seen go through the transition. And if you've never seen someone go through it, it's a very, very strange process, because they become a different person.
Yeah.
Which is the saddest part. And I remember my grandma was like that generation that would just, like if they went out and had a fall and broke their wrist, and they just carry on and just do everything with that wrist, tough as nails. Yeah. They did everything, right? And then we just watched her sort of deteriorate, and it goes from like 0 to 100 really fast, though, is what I found. Like, it wasn't just, I'm forgetting this or I'm forgetting that. It was, I forgot everything. Do you know what I mean? Or I don't know where I am and stuff. And she was like calling the police and stuff, looking for her husband. He hasn't come home. He's been dead for like 15 years. Yeah. And then like she's like, I've been off to the factory today to see the girls and stuff. And she hadn't worked for like years, And it was just this mad sort of transition where you see someone go from fully capable, like the person that to someone that you look at and it's almost like a bit of a stranger. So where does... what's the research with Alzheimer's? What sort of causes it? Is there a cause?
So they think, because most people, well, now they know it's not all genetic. So there is still a slight genetic trait. Okay. But most of it is lifestyle and environment. And I was shocked to learn. So there's one in 3 of us now will end up with Alzheimer's. That's absolutely shocking. And 1 in 20 will be under the age of 65. Have
these stats increased? Is this getting worse?
Definitely. So since lockdown, they're saying. Interesting enough, though, Alzheimer's begins 20 years before you get your first symptom.
Wow.
Yeah. So it really matters what you're doing now.
Yeah. So that guy at the group who was like, what you say, mid-40s, he would have had it mid-20s?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it literally takes about 20 years. Depending what you're doing, but yeah, the stats have increased since COVID because a lot of it, if you think about it, a lot of it's down to sleep. So I will scream at people about sleep and having a good, proper night's sleep. It's not for rest. It's actually, our brains are more active when we're asleep than we are awake. It's so important. Socialising, like we had isolation. We didn't socialise. Mental health, massively, like things like depression leads to Alzheimer's. Exercise, people don't really exercise or move much anymore. Again, increase to Alzheimer's. Food, processed food. Like how many people eat the right fruit and vegetables every day? Huge.
It's 5 a day. You told that in school. You know what I mean? And we still don't do it.
We still don't do it, but it's nothing complicated.
Yeah.
If that's it is just a healthy life. There's no quick fix. It's just daily living and thinking about your brain. And I think a lot of us don't think about our brains. I certainly didn't at one point because we can't look upwards or inwards. You can look down. We can't see our hearts, but we can look down. But our brains are the most powerful things we've got, and we don't know. The general public don't know that much about it.
It's crazy. I didn't realise it jumped up after COVID. I think one thing that obviously I work for a gym and stuff, and one thing that we get when people call up to ask about programs or whatever is they'll say, I've still got like a bit of lockdown weight. And I love hearing that because I'm like, you still hold on to lockdown weight? I'm like, it's 2024 now. Like, are you still holding on to lockdown weight? I'm like, come on. Like, you've done nothing in all these years to shift a little bit of... do you know what I mean? But that's the mentality of most people is and when a lot of people, when they find the weight, they don't lose it. And it's sad. But when you think back to sort of... one of the things I love, and I'll get into as well, is the evolutionary psychology sort of stuff. I absolutely love the theories about where we come from, why our brains do certain things. And it's like, if you think about sort of, early ancestors and stuff, they were always on the move. They were always eating, I mean, I don't know what they were eating, like but they were mostly eating anything that they could find that was there was no processed stuff, really, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they were probably healthier than we are now. I mean, they died a lot younger, and they were killed by tigers and other tribes and stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, the way they moved their bodies, the way they treated them was probably a lot better than we treat them today, I would probably wager.
Well, interestingly enough, I think, a lot of people, like I say, Alzheimer's and things like that, is considered old people having them. But there is actually, I don't know whether you heard the research they did in America in actually 2010 with the nuns.
No, do tell.
So it was 2010. I think there was 69 nuns altogether decided to donate their brains once they passed away to Neuroscience. And this was for Alzheimer's. And what happened was they scanned the brains, as you would normally with somebody with Alzheimer's, and it showed they got Alzheimer's, yet they got no cognitive decline. Not one thing.
Interesting.
So they realised quickly they were living in a community, they were still very active, they weren't eating processed food. It was all simple things. So our brains do naturally shrink as we get older, but it showed that just because we're getting older and living longer doesn't mean we have to suffer. Yeah,
because people do associate getting older with just, oh, well, my back's going, my knees are going, this happens, I'm going to forget stuff. And it's like, that will happen, but you can offset it and it doesn't have to be as bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you see these grandmas and granddads running marathons, and I saw like a 93-year-old deadlifting the other day on Instagram. I was like, Jesus, she lifts more than me. But you know what I mean? It is a choice at the end of the day. It is. So what choices would you tell someone right now? Someone's listening to this now realise that they're going to get Alzheimer's. Do you realize? So what life choices would you tell them to sort of change now?
So like I said before, massively sleep. That's how our brain restores and transfers memories. The biggest one is stress. Massively is stress, and that comes in many forms. And 25% increase since COVID in mental health. That is going to have massive impact on later life and Alzheimer's. So interestingly enough, I know we spoke about it the other day, but I put a poll out on my group, and I literally said, are you seeing people more negative, being more stressed, or are you not noticing it all, or people more positive? And 100% of them said everybody seems more stressed and negative now. And that...
angry as well.
Angry, yeah.
Everyone's pissed off non-stop. Like, have you ever waited in a line for like anything more than 5 minutes? And everyone's like, and they're like, do you know what I mean? There's no patience. Yeah, it's just anger.
Nobody's patient. And it's so bad for your brain health. And literally, I go out to people, I do Zooms about it, about stress management, and they literally, I give them all the morbid stuff at first, and they prick their ears up, and they're like, okay, we're listening now.
Yeah, fear's a good motivator, isn't it?
Yeah, so I go in and I tell them all the morbid stuff, and then here's how to fix it. But the how to fix it really isn't that complicated.
Yeah.
It's like, move. Eat. When was the last time you seen a vegetable?
A vegetable? What?
When was the last time you learnt something new? And I often think, it's interesting you speak about evolution and things like that. Now it's even more important that we learn about brain health. Because we've got technology that does everything for us. We don't have to think. We don't have to look on a map for a sat-nav. We don't have to organise food, because you can go in a supermarket and everything's pre-ready made and you just bung it in the oven. You don't have to call a friend, because you can look at their post on Facebook. You don't have to go to the supermarket or anything, because you can just buy it with a click of a button. So we don't have to think now. So what do you want your brain to do? Because it will always go to the negative if it's got nothing to think about or nothing to learn. And people are, oh yeah.
Well, one of the things is, and you can tell me if this is healthy or not, but one of the things that I love to do is, if I start to feel a little bit negative or down, or I start seeing the world through, this grey scale, is I just make myself really busy with stuff that I enjoy doing, not just random bits of crap, whatever, stuff that needs doing, things I know I should do, let's step this up. And what I end up doing is I basically make myself so busy that I can't be miserable. I can't be negative, because I've got too much going on to even consider the world as a negative place.
Absolutely. If you continue to stay in a negative place and not do anything, it's only going to get worse. Like literally, as if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, I feel a bit flat today," we're like, "Have you been outside?"
But when you say that to people, though,
yeah,
their instant reaction is, "Oh, for God's sake, don't!" Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, you don't want to do anything about it.
Have you moved today? Have you ate something that's healthy for you? How did you sleep? You know, have you engaged with anybody? And they just look at you, and it's like, it really is simple. It really isn't hard, because you have got to think of when we were cavemen. You know, they didn't have like technology. They were walking around. They had to go and hunt for their food. You know, they had a focus to think about. They had a mission for that day.
Well, I always say the biggest thing for men is mental health, because I think men and women's mental health needs treated a little bit differently. I think each one has their unique way that it can be, overcome. And one of the things I read somewhere, and it was it was basically saying, imagine the dopamine rush when you went out, killed a deer or whatever, and then you're bringing that back to a tribe of people, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna eat." Yeah, you know what I mean? As a dude, that would feel unbelievable, right? Because you accomplished something. You went out there, you killed, you brought it back, you fed your family, you looked after your tribe, and now it's like we don't have anything even remotely close to what could give us that rush. And I think that's why, like, if you are miserable as a man, I'm not going to say depressed, because we'll get into that as well, but if you're feeling a bit miserable and like you're not doing anything, do something with massive amounts of action that's going to give you that massive rush. Action for me personally is the answer when I'm miserable, to do something, not to wallow in it. Yeah.
If you think about it, it's an alarm clock, isn't it?
Yeah, well, depression is a bit of a motivator as well, isn't it? It's supposed to motivate you to do stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And we're supposed to have all these amazing brain chemicals, you know, dopamine, oxytocin. It's all healthy for our brains.
Yeah.
Serotonin. And if you're not doing anything and expecting to just do nothing and just suddenly start to feel all right, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. But like you said, it's the basic stuff. Move, eat better, socialize. It's just stuff that you think humans should just do anyway.
But we're just so disconnected more than ever now from what the basics actually are.
Well, have you seen WALL-E, the film, the cartoon?
Yeah.
You know where they're all sat at the beginning and they're all in them chairs and they're all like fat and they've got screens around them? That's literally what we're like. We're just gonna be like, There's a person like how often have you? Obviously you drive, but how often have you ever seen the like photos of the metro line or whatever, or the trains, and everyone's heads down, headphones in? I miss talking to people on buses. Whenever I used to get the bus to the gym before I had a car, there was always some older generation person would always just start talking to us. I like your shoes, like, oh, I haven't got a phone like that, or I like your hair when I had hair, I like your hair, you know. They'd just start a conversation.
Yeah.
And you were so shocked by someone actually talking to you, you kind of stared at them for a second like like you forgot how to communicate, you know?
Yeah.
But it is true. We're getting further and further away from being sociable animals, which is what we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how does someone, other than move and stuff like with stress, what does it actually do to the brain, to the body? What does it actually do?
Right. So this is the amazing science of the brain. This is the part I love, and this is where I start to scare everybody. So with stress, we've got two tiny little things in our brains called amygdalas, which are responsible for your fight, flight, and freeze systems.
Okay.
These can be a little dramatic. We couldn't be alive without them now, because this is our safety system.
Yeah.
What happens is we are no longer having to run from bears or fight bears or go and hunt or anything like that. So the modern day world is our perceived threat. And I do say perceived threat because it's not really a threat. We're not going to die from arguing with somebody on social media.
True. Although a lot of people act that way.
Yeah. But this is still in our brains, and it still works like it did back then. Right, so it's something to be aware of, and we have got two of them. What happens is they become more reactive. The more stress you get, they'll get more reactive because these love running the show. And they do expand a little bit as well. So if if you've ever seen somebody arguing or complaining about a queue in Costa, they'll probably, like 10 years ago, wouldn't have even noticed that. You know, you start to pick on more things that are threats when this is scanning for threats. Everything comes
When there's no large threat, there's a smaller threat that seems large. Would that be the correct?
Yes,
right.
Yeah. So you'll often see more reactive people. You can sit there and go, your amygdala's grown a little bit. Just let's calm it down a little bit.
Can you imagine saying that to someone on Facebook who's angry? Your amygdala's grown a little bit.
Because we're not born with an oversized amygdala. You know, it's literally the environment that we're perceiving that has grown this. So that's like the drama queen of the brain. But what it does is when it gains its energy and it's like, I'm taking over now, we've got a prefrontal cortex obviously at the front of the brain, and that's like your CEO. That's like your executive brain. This is the good part of the brain, that it's there for being rational. It makes good decisions, planning, goals, your thinking brain.
Yeah.
So this goes offline when you're in amygdala's wide awake, because that's where it's taking its energy from. So it's like if you've got somebody that's angry and you're telling them to calm down, they functionally just can't calm down. Same the way if somebody's really anxious about going out and you can say, just come out for 10 minutes. Like, they won't be able to see that because they can't see that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So that goes offline. The next thing that's kind of alerted is your hypothalamus. So that's like your production line. So if you think like just little minions just sending out which brain chemicals you need to do whatever you're doing at the time. So this starts releasing high levels of cortisol and adrenaline and glucose, because it's getting ready for you to fight or run. You know, it's sending extra blood to your arms or legs or whichever system you've gone into. But when we have high levels of stress, your hippocampus, which is your memory center, this wakes up as well, because what it's designed to do is think of your friend that's always taking a selfie, right? We've all got one.
Yeah.
Mine's sat over there. Right? Get in the camera. Just wait, I need to take a picture. Let's have a selfie. So this wakes up, and it's supposed to wake up because it's going to take pictures of what you're stressed out about, because it needs to know in the future of what to avoid.
Like a reference point, right?
Like a reference point. The downside of this is that after 20 minutes of acute stress, brain cells in this area start to die. And that's a leading cause of Alzheimer's. Now, the stress response, so these 4 areas, you know, they're designed to do that, to keep us alive. It scans for threats, the hormones come out, and the hippocampus is taking photos. Now, all of that has only got a 90-second lifespan. That's all it's supposed to be designed to do. But if you were stressed out, how long was you stressed out for? Because I can guarantee it wasn't 90 seconds, it was a lot longer.
Maybe it's a little bit longer, yeah.
So after that, it's purely your thoughts that is triggering the amygdala to keep firing up and for these to keep releasing. Because we're designed to go, this is a threat, let's get away, or this is a threat, no it isn't, we need to calm down. But many people are stressed for a hell of a lot longer.
Is it because of their thoughts?
Because of the thoughts, yeah. Because we're perceiving so much as threats. You know, so that it swings from both ends of the scales. It could be, somebody that's anxious and not wanting to go outside, to somebody who's working flat out, who believes they've got no time for the family and kids and everything's overwhelming. So it works at both ends of the scales. We're perceiving threats everywhere.
Yeah. God, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? I think is it possible to, because one thing that I read, I think it was years ago, was something about increasing, not lowering stress, but increasing your ability to handle stress.
Yeah.
Is that a smart move to increase your capability to handle stress, or is it a detriment?
So it works in both ways. So I always say to people, learn how to get rid of cortisol and learn to de-stress properly, you know, because we all get stressed about something. The other side of it is it does help if you are getting stressed a little bit and then your brain's saying it's all right to be that, and then especially if it's releasing dopamine. So they did an interesting research on skydivers Because
I did that once. Probably won't do it again, but yeah.
I've done it twice actually.
Show off. Show off.
But people on roller coasters as well get this if you go on roller coasters.
Right.
Because
okay.
what's happening is, take the roller coasters. A lot more people have done that. In the queue, you've got a bit of anticipation, so you are naturally going to get stressed, right? But then 2 minutes later, when you're on the roller coaster and you've come off, you're like, oh, that was amazing. So your amygdala's woken up. You've had a bit of cortisol, but then something good has come off it. So you do actually become more mentally resilient because your brain's, you're working out that it's not all perceived threat and it doesn't have to go on for hours and hours.
Right, okay.
So short amounts of where you're getting out your comfort zone.
Right, yeah.
You know, and doing something a little bit challenging does make you more mentally resilient.
I definitely think when I started making videos, like probably about 7 years ago, and stuff like that, you get more confident doing it. I don't get that stress when the cameras go on anymore. Like if someone was, say there's someone, a news reporter in the street or whatever, and there's a camera going on, right? You see them occasionally on the quayside or whatever down in Newcastle, and loads of people walk around or like stare at it and they're like, oh my god, a camera. But I'm just like, no, it's a camera. Like, do you know what I mean? I'll walk straight around it and I don't have to look at it. I just don't bat an eyelid, and it's like things like that. But things like public speaking as well. Yeah. Most people would rather be killed than do public speaking. Yeah. But it's like, now probably me and you could do that pretty easily, I would imagine. Just from the first time you do it, it's like it's like you feel naked in front of everyone. But then the more you do it, it is I can see that. Yeah. But
that's where neuroplasticity comes in, you see, which is a whole different ball game.
Okay, explain that to me then.
You're always going to get nervous about something that you've not done before because it's an unknown to your brain.
Yeah.
So it's got nothing to go on, no past experiences, not anything. You've got no neuron connections there to support this neither. So I often say to people, go and do something new so we can grow some neuroplasticity. So what will happen is that with the speaking on stage, that first time, you'll be an absolute nervous wreck. And it probably won't be the best thing you've ever done because we can't go in and expect to do something great. It's like when people start the gym. You know, it's always that thing like, I'm not going to be able to do it. Right?
Yeah.
But just go for 10 minutes and do what you can. And then the next time, just keep being consistent because this is how neurons grow and neuroplasticity grows. And your brain's going, okay, we can do this now. We can go to the next stage. And it's constant. And that's where new brain cells come as well.
Yeah. Well, it's like that analogy for the gym is perfect because it's like you grow on a muscle, you absolutely destroy it, you wreck it, it hurts, it grows to match the resistance. You put more resistance on it, it tears, it grows again. I'm assuming that's exactly the same logic for the brain.
Absolutely. It's the same, use it or lose it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's same as a muscle, even though the brain's not a muscle, but it's the same thing. So actually getting out your comfort zone. And that's where willpower grows as well, doing something that you don't particularly want to do, that you're not good at, but you're going to do it anyway. Yeah,
I think one of the things I've always sort of prided myself in, which leads me to my next thing is hustle culture, is regardless of how I feel, I have to do the thing anyway. Yeah. And that is, a lot of people go, oh, well, you can have a day off, you can relax, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, well, if I don't, that excuse is there for me every single time. Yeah. So it's like, if I'm tired, because some days I've edited a video and it's took us 6 hours. And then it's like, now I've got to go put myself through a workout routine. And the last thing I want to do is move, right? But I'm like, if I don't do it, that excuse is going to be there next time I feel a bit tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my willpower will be drained because I'll remember this reference point of, well, you were tired that time, you didn't go, nothing happened, so, you know, you were okay. Yeah. You felt good, you got a little bit of...
Die.
Yeah, you didn't die. Yeah. You didn't drop a barbell on your neck or something. Yeah. But I do think that there is an upside and a downside to hustle culture. So what would you say is your take on hustle culture and its impact on our minds?
Oh, well, we are definitely a generation of hustle culture. I think looking back now, probably my dad fell into that category as well. So it's probably the generation before. But it's like, you know, we'll sleep when we die.
I hear that. Yeah. I'm like, I love sleep.
Keep on, carry on. You know, it's all things like, you know, just hustling all the time. Like if we're sleeping, we're not winning. Yeah. And that is not good for your brain as well. So I talk about life balance a lot with people and they just roll their eyes. But, you know, you can go from not doing anything to doing way too much. And you need to be somewhere in the middle. With hustle culture, people massively struggle with focus. and attention.
Yes.
And they're always like, they're multitasking, and I'm like, you're not multitasking though.
Multitasking is just doing several things in a lackluster way.
Yeah, I think only 2% of the population can actually multitask at a good level. The rest of us, we are just switching brain functions all the time, which is actually quite damaging to your prefrontal cortex. So if I actually say to somebody who's in the hustle culture, like, let's monotask, and they look at you as if to say, well, I can't do that. Like, they don't get it. It's like one thing at a time. So I do get people to do like time blocking. And I'm like, great, you've got focus. You know what you're doing. You're being productive. Where's your breaks? And they're like, you've got a 4-hour window of where you're doing marketing and emails and things like that, and you're expecting your brain to keep up like that. How about we do it for 40 minutes and then have a 5-minute break where you put everything down just to let your brain reset? But it's so alien to people. It's like people that are feeling depressed, you tell them to go to the gym and they're like, well, I can't do that. The hustle culture can't put things down. And I often say to people as well, so when your hours of work is at 9 till 5, and they're like, yeah, so are you talking about work when you're home? Well, yeah. So you're still working then. Your brain is still working. You might not be in the office, but your brain can't tell where you are. So as far as that's concerned, it's still working. So how are you sleeping? Well, we're not. No, because you won't sleep with cortisol in your system. So it's about balancing everything through life, whether it's what you're thinking, what you're working towards, your health, your moving, your diet. And it throws a lot of people, if I'm being honest.
Do you think different people have a different definition of what that balance is?
Yes, yeah, massively. Because I think, if I say to somebody, right, are you going to relax this weekend? A lot of people, they'll go, well, I can't sit there and do nothing. I was like, I don't want you to do anything if you don't want to. By relaxing, that could be going to the gym. Like, you can see it as self-care. It could be going out and meeting family. I think we are very much a culture of all or nothing.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that is the problem.
Yeah, it's not one drink, it's let's get pissed.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like people that are working all hours God sends, if you literally tell them to do nothing, that they can't comprehend that.
Well, one of the best examples of this is telling someone to start going to the gym, because they'll get really fixated on going to the gym, and they'll go, okay, so I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, 6 days. I'm going to push it to 6 days. I've got all these supplements lined up. I've got cupboards full of protein powder. I've got the grenade protein bars. You know, I'm doing the lives on Facebook every day of me push-up challenge and stuff. And it's like, okay, that's not going to last.
No.
Because you've gone all out.
Yeah.
Completely just thrown yourself in the deep end.
Yeah.
And then you're going to burn out and do nothing. And then you're back to square one, wondering what the hell happened. Well, that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, just start eating a little bit better.
Yeah.
Then go to the gym. Do you know?
Just
it's
little
one.
steps.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people can't do incremental growth. It has to be, I'm either ripped now or it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's mad.
It's like that saying, isn't it? Is it tiny steps, big leaps? We miss that. Like, that our generation does not get that. We can't. I often say to people, just think of yourself in 5 years' time, right? What would your future self say thank you for doing right now? And it would be taking that tiny little step to going and enrolling in a gym and doing 5-minute walk on a treadmill or whatever, and then upping it. Because it's like that whole thing with the New Year's resolutions. People start the New Year's resolutions, the whole list that looks great.
Sounds new year, new me, let's go.
Yeah. And then expecting them, like your brain, to go, okay, we're going along with this, all of it. And then I say to people, your brain loves to be efficient. It takes 20% of our energy every day, right? Every day. If you want it to be optimal for you, you've got to show it what you want to do, but you've got to keep being consistent, being tiny, and carrying it on. It can't be all or nothing. You can't do it for a week and then not do it for 2 weeks and then go back and expect to be able to do the same things in the gym you were doing before, because your brain loves to be efficient. It'll just get rid of it and you'll be starting again.
Yeah.
So let's just go small. But people look at you funny with that as well, because people are so impatient.
Yeah.
So they can't ever see their self in 5 years' time, because it's now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's hard. But the gym, we keep coming back to it, but the gym is the best example of anything to do with your mindset can be put back into the gym, and it's crazy. Yeah. And it's like, well, I remember, so when I was about 18 is when I started training, right? And I went in, and I remember I had this trainer, Paul, lovely bloke, scary as hell. He looked a little bit like Jason Statham if he had bigger ears, right? Yeah. So I'll put you guys in touch. I'll put you in touch with you. But yeah, but he was like, okay, one of the first things he said was, go and see if you can lift that bar. Let's see where you're at, right? And I mean, I was, if you hugged me, you got a paper cut, right? I was that thin. And I goes to this bar, and I'm like, all right. And I like couldn't lift this. It's only, you know, just the standard bars. It's like 20 kilograms or something like that. And I was like trying to lift it with my arms, and I'm like not lifting it right and stuff. Now I'm throwing that around with one arm easy. You know what I mean? But I mean, it granted, it hasn't took me it hasn't took me 10 years to learn how to pick up a 20 kilogram bar, but it was like 2 months in, or something like that, and I'm okay with this. But it's like people would go and do that first thing and be like, oh, well, I can't do it first thing, so I'm probably never going to be able to do it. I can't do it now, so what's the point?
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you say you can't, you will never be able to do it, because your brain will never fire into action to even try. Yeah,
it's like, what's that Will Smith quote? Is the man who thinks you can and the man who thinks you can't are both right?
Right, both right, and that is so true when it comes to your brain and neuroscience. But yeah, it's incredible. I think it's the most powerful thing you can learn about your brain, to work with it instead of against it and expecting it to perform.
But when you say working with your brain, though, so is it, if you feel tired, so say before when I said I'm going to go to the gym even if I'm tired, a lot of people, to go with their brains makes it sound like, well, my brain's tired, I'm not going to go. So where do you get that fine balance between listening to your brain and actually going, no, come on, we need to actually step up here?
Okay, so with this, it's like all about like your energy. And like I say, our brains like to be efficient. So if you're the kind of person that has like a nap when you finish work or something, your brain will get into the routine of that, so you'll start to automatically feel tired. So you've got to get to a point where you think, right, if I'm tired and I'm going to the gym, is that going to make me feel better, or is my brain just used to getting down back from work, sitting down and going, right, that was a long day, now it's time to relax?
Yeah.
Because like I say, your brain can't tell where you are. So if you routinely like got it into thinking, right, that was hard, that was a hard day, I feel tired, you are so going to like bin that gym session off, instead of going, right, actually, I'm just telling myself that, and I could actually go and do something at the gym and feel so much better for it.
Yeah, amazing
so
point.
What we think literally wires your brain. So people get into a rut. I was saying on a group session a few months back, you know, we all, my other half does it. He used to come home from work, sit there, have a coffee, and it was like, oh, right, okay. And I was like, you've wired your brain to do that, because if I turn around to you now and I said, right, let's go out for a meal and go to the cinema, you'd be all right, then let's go. So it's just conditioned how you've conditioned your brain.
Well, that brings me on my next question. Is it possible, because obviously people say, well, I've always been this way, or I've always done this, I've always felt like this, I've always done this. How easy is it to rewire the brain to a new habit?
First thing is, so you've really got to want to do it. That's key.
Okay.
Absolutely key. And you can rewire your brain quite easily. Now, often people say, well, how long will it take me to get a new habit? That's different for everybody. It matters on how old you are, because our brains take a little bit longer with the neuroplasticity as we get older. You know, we don't learn things as quick as kids do. But it depends on what it is that you're doing as well, and how much you want to do it. Okay, it's like learning anything. It's like, what subject do you love learning about?
Me personally?
Yeah.
To be honest, at the minute, it's evolutionary psychology stuff. Okay. I'm really fascinated by that.
So what would you hate to learn about?
Maths.
Right, so you are more naturally going to learn so much quicker about the stuff you're interested in than something that you're not. So neuroplasticity works in the same way. So if you're really wanting to get healthier, and we'll use the gym again, go to the gym, like, that's the first step. You've got to sit there and go, right, I really want to do this. I'm really interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you're not, your brain's just lost it, and you'll be bored, and everything will just take so much more energy.
Yeah.
Consistency is key. And everybody says this and everybody rolls their eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is so important with a new habit, because we're expecting our brain to learn this new habit and sustain it.
Mm-hmm.
But it can only do it by number one rule of neuroplasticity is repeat, repeat, repeat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when we was learning to tie a shoe when we was little, it's how we brush our teeth. All neuroplasticity rules everything that we do every day, every movement, every action. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to think about putting the kettle on now. We've only done that because we've kept repeating it and repeating it and repeating it.
Yeah.
But it's really important that you want to change.
Yeah. I think as well, like, I mean, to be saying that, you say that's a habit. I went to put my kettle in the fridge the other morning because I was just so tired. I was like, this is going there. But it is like, I've totally lost my train of thought actually with that. 'Cause I'm trying to think of all the brain stuff.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, this has stumped me. I'm like so interested in this. I don't want to ask you more questions. I'm so stumped. But actually, moving on. Actually, in terms of the consistency thing. So the best analogy I could give for this was have you heard the Chinese bamboo tree thing? It's a classic story, classic self-help thing. So it's basically this guy in a little Chinese village gets a seed from the market, plants it, and he waters it. Chinese bamboo tree, nothing grows. Right, all the villagers are going, okay, keep at it. We'll see what happens. Waters it months later, nothing. Right, all the villagers are like, give up on that. Stop watering it. Nothing's gonna grow. And then eventually, like years later, it shoots up to like 20-foot tall Chinese bamboo tree, strong as out. And it was just because he watered it every day.
Yeah,
if he'd stopped watering it, nothing would have shot up. And that always sits in my mind when I think of consistency. I'm like, because it's like if you see anyone who's got any results, any success, it's never overnight. It's always built up over time.
Yeah.
Because you can outlast people. This is the one thing as well. You can always outlast people. Like if you are consistent with, say, like 100 of you start, by the end there's only maybe 4 left. And they were the most consistent. They became the most successful. Not because they were any better than the ones who started, just because they didn't give up and they kept consistent.
That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's neuroplasticity at its best.
Yeah. So in terms of how the brain is getting absolutely slammed by phones at the minute, how does phones affect attention span and focus, in your opinion?
It's huge. So obviously focus and attention go hand in hand. And we are a generation of, let's say we call ourselves multitaskers, but we can't. Women are actually worse for that as well, by the way.
I didn't want to say anything. Men can't multitask. I'm like,
yeah. We need to stop saying. Women need to stop saying that.
Yeah.
But ideally, if you think about it, your brain can only think of one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So if we're scrolling on our phones when we should be doing something else, we're literally sitting there going, I should be doing that, but we're just going to keep scrolling a little bit more. Our attention is just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's draining.
Yeah.
It's absolutely draining. So the first thing I teach people is, let's do one thing at a time. And then I started talking about flow state. So what do you find challenging, that you really enjoy, that you just lose time altogether because you're going to be really productive in that area?
Mm-hmm.
So finding that as well. And then attention is massively linked into sleep as well. So you normally find that people that can't focus properly or are having problems with attention aren't sleeping as well, because it's all spinning around in their heads. So I teach them, first of all, sleep and stress, because you can never focus when you're stressed at all. You can never make a decision when you've got cortisol and your prefrontal cortex is turned off. So
well, you can. It's just never a good one.
Never a good one.
Yeah.
So as soon as you start fixing those two things, you will automatically start to feel more focused. Your attention will improve when you know how your brain works and how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fascinating.
Well, with phones, obviously at the minute everything's like short form content.
Short form.
But why is that? Why are our attention spans getting worse? Well, how do you know much about the TikTok stuff?
The TikTok, and the 5 seconds and the things like that. Yeah. So we are like that. You have to grab somebody's attention straight away. The downside of it is the whole world's like that. So after 5 seconds, we're just going like, okay, what's next? Because we're bored.
Yeah, well, brain's like, what's the next thing?
What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So literally, it has a massive impact because, like I say, if I turned around to you and said, right, I just want you to go and sit for 15 minutes and not think about anything, you'll struggle.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with like phones and emails, was constantly getting pings, you know, everything like that.
My phone's on silent because I was getting annoyed at the amount of buzzing. Because at first, phones used to buzz when you got a text message, right? That was it. Yeah, you got like a little bit of rush. Ooh, like, who's messaged me? And it's like, have new offers. Fuck off, man. You know what I mean? But it's like, now it's like everything, like such and such highlight. Have you seen these ones where such and such highlighted a comment for you to see on Facebook? Yeah. I'm like, I don't know this person. I've got 1,000 odd people on Facebook. I don't know who this person's highlighting a comment. But it's like, every second. So my phone is constantly on silent. No one can get through to me unless I actively check my phone.
Yeah.
Because it started to get to a point where I was actually getting stressed by my phone.
Yeah.
But not from looking at it, but just from It was like water torture, a little droplet of water. It was like that. It was horrible.
But we've taught our brains to be, but not just you obviously, but as a whole.
Yeah, it's all my fault. Yeah.
But it's how society's gone that's taught our brains like that. So we find it hard to be bored now.
I'm never bored. I don't remember the last time I said I was bored, to be honest.
I didn't plan anything for over Christmas, and I got bored. I really let myself down.
But I mean more in terms of like, there's never nothing for me to do because I pull my phone out,
which is great because you're controlling where your focus goes.
Well, no, I mean in terms of just like, if I feel the slightest bit of like nothing going on, the phone's out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Instagram, Facebook, it takes away that boredom instantly. I'm never just sat there going, well, there's nothing to do, you know?
Yeah.
I've always got a TikTok or a reel or something.
We've always got a go-to, haven't we?
Yeah, an escapism, yeah.
Yeah, and then that also, like, our overthinking from that just grows massively. So a lot of people, like, come to me as well where they're just, like, that overwhelmed that they're, like, talking to me, like, 100 miles an hour, like... And it's because the world absolutely is fast moving. We can't, like, the and everything is just thrown at us. And one day I did actually a video on my ladies group where I said, right, I just want you to do something for me for a second. So I got them all to close their eyes. I want you to take a deep breath in and out. I said, I want you to say out loud to your brain, what is my next thought going to be?
Okay.
And I sat there, I was like, what's happened? And they were like, I couldn't think of anything. I was like, perfect. You've just literally cut all your thoughts off. You didn't need to look at your phone. You didn't need to think of what you needed to do. And you just gave yourself 5 seconds before you start flicking back on your phone.
Yeah. Before I'm like, overwhelmed. Yeah.
But it's like these things with the phones, like you can get the things that you put them in so you can't.
Oh, like a lockbox. We had one in here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but yeah, we had one in the kitchen safe. Yeah. So
how did you react?
Do you know what? It's like losing a finger. It's so weird. It's like if someone took one of your feet and just put it in a box, and you're like, well, I can't go anywhere without this box. You know what I mean? It's weird. It's a weird feeling, but you feel like this isn't normal. This isn't normal to feel like this for not having a phone.
It's funny you should say that because I was on about it last night. So where I live, our mobile phone mast set on fire a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Right.
So on a mid-Saturday afternoon, right? So nobody had got any internet at home, any Wi-Fi, any phone signal, no landline, no Sky TV, no nothing. It didn't go well with people.
Oh, yeah.
I was absolutely shocked how much we relied on social media. Nobody could order an Uber. Nobody could do nothing.
The tragedy. Just eat. What do you mean we can't get a takeaway? It is. Well, it's funny you mention that because we just had works on our street, didn't we? And they're just putting in Virgin lines and stuff in the street and stuff. And I love the residents pages. They're the local residents, right? And I'm like, there's work going on. People are going to start talking about this. And you know when we said at the beginning, like people just find problems because there's no massive big picture thing. And there's like people going, if you all send a message to this email and complain, and I'm like, about what? They're just doing their job. The disruption. Oh, you had to wait 2 minutes to get your car off your drive. I'm sorry. I do apologize. But it was like people's little bitchy problems, and I'm just like, like, if there's bigger things going on, you should have something so big in your life that is your purpose, your mission, that you cannot find the time to bitch and moan about, power lines going down or whatever. But in terms of the Wi-Fi and stuff, like, it is true. Like, if I remember when I was a kid having power cuts, they're not a thing anymore. I don't remember last time I had a power cut, but I used to really love it because it was like candles, books, everything like that. Like,
nice.
there was no phones, you know what I mean? And it was just that level of peace we don't get anymore.
No.
And especially before bed, like you said, with all the pings and stuff like that. Like, I try not to go on my phone at least 15 minutes. To say like half an hour, is that right, before bed? Just let your brain calm down.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't really be using your phone as well. Start to nag you after 4 o'clock because of the blue light.
After 4 o'clock? I'm buggered then.
Yeah,
I'm still on my phone well after 4 o'clock.
Yeah, you need blue light glasses if you go. So I have to use it because I'm working online with people. But yeah, it affects your melatonin.
So what does that blue light actually do to the brain?
So we've got melatonin, which is let's say it's the vampire chemical. So it doesn't make you sleepy at all. It's just designed there to tell your body and your brain if it's night or day. So at 4 o'clock, this starts building up in our systems. So as soon as it sees blue light, it's going, no, we need to get out of here. It's still like middle of the day. Like, we've got it wrong. So it can't build up. So yeah, I always say to people, after 4 o'clock, blue light. Definitely not.
Yeah, so what are some of the misconceptions about sleep that people have, that people get wrong when it comes to their sleep cycles and how it affects them?
I hear, and this is mainly in the hustle culture as well, people say, well, I can get away with 5 hours.
No, you can't.
And I'm thinking, you might be able to, but in like 10 years' time, and you've got like a horrible diagnosis, you're going to kick yourself.
And you look about
really
90, yeah.
Yeah, and when you've got your brain full of amyloid plaque, and it's not going to be good. So they do say 7 to 9 hours. And that's purely because we've got a fascinating kind of system in our head. We've got glial cells in our brains that are absolutely so impressive. And like I say, our brains are very active at night. So it's busy transferring short-term memories into long-term memories, and then getting rid of anything we don't need, which is why habit and doing it consistent is so important, because if we fall off the wagon with whatever, the brain's going, we don't need this information now, we need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So these go around and they're literally pruning away all the things we don't need so the brain can be efficient for the next day. And then it flushes all of this out of our brain so we can wake up the next day and it's more efficient and it's great. So we only get this if we're having 7 to 9 hours. If you aren't getting the 7 to 9 hours, you are missing this crucial step. And without this flushing of the system, we get amyloid plaque build up in our brain, which is the leading cause of Alzheimer's, which is amyloid plaque. So the only way we can get rid of it is through proper sleep. So it's one of those things I do literally scream.
Do you think people? Yeah, do you think everyone needs the same amount of sleep?
Physically, people, so your body only needs 2 hours sleep physically for your body. Yeah. So
I disagree. I think I would die if I only had 2 hours sleep. I would feel like the worst person.
Physically, your brain can't do what it needs to do in that hours.
But your body did, right? Okay,
your body
right.
can just go on 2 hours, like I say. So the rest of the time, it's all your brain doing. So people will feel like they are fully active and physical and can be like with less than that. But over time, like I say, it's that crucial step that you're missing out that's massive for your cognitive health going forward. And you can get it with the hustle culture, and you can get it with people that are quite sedentary as well. So sleep problem is across the board, like the stresses as well. And I regularly, so I'm a brain coach for online PT, because I honestly think that looking after yourself physically is so important. But if you can tie the brain health in with it as well, you're onto a winner. Because if you are physically really healthy, but you continue to get in stress and you're not sleeping, then it's a bit of a non-starter. You're still going to end up cognitively declining. So let's work on both. And even those people, like with the sleep, they're like, I didn't even realise. I thought like that 5 hours was enough, because you read so much different opinions on the internet. And a big misconception as well, that book that came out, there's a 9 till 5 book. You know, everybody was trying to go to sleep at 9 till 5.
Yeah.
And that's great because some like early birds can do that. But night owls literally can't because their body clock can't do that. So you've got all these people that were trying to get to sleep at 9 o'clock and wake up at 5 and then wondering why they weren't feeling great. It's like, because your body clock isn't like that. Yeah. You're a night owl, so let's work with what you've got.
Are you able to change that if you...
Not really.
Okay.
So I was saying, we did a sleep masterclass the other day, and they are actually putting out, not that I've been on a dating app, just to point it out, but apparently they are actually putting on dating apps to see if you're a night owl or morning person, because it does cause massive problems in relationships.
Yeah.
Because one of you will always look lazy.
Yeah, and they'll not respect your sleep pattern. Yeah. And yeah.
But it's like with me, with Ben growing up, so I always knew that his sleep was really important. And he's a night owl, which I now know. But at the time, I used to go in the bedroom at 8 o'clock in the morning, come on, I'm thinking you're really lazy and you're a teenager.
Yeah, as you
I
do.
feel really bad now because he's just a night owl and he was never going to be getting up at that time.
It's interesting because I always thought I was a night owl, and then I tried to become a morning person, and it just did not work. I was like trying to get up at 6, and I was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing. But I was just forcing myself to try and change it. I didn't realize that was just how I was. Yeah. In terms of the words that are thrown around, so things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, ADD even, there's some of they're probably the 4 most common self-diagnosed mental disorders, issues, whatever you want to call them. What is your take on people self-diagnosing things with their brain?
I think it's very damaging. I really do. I do think we are a culture of labelling as well. Mm-hmm. Very damaging, because you are what you believe where your brain's concerned.
Interesting.
So if you are an anxious person, you are going to get anxious, and there's a good chance that you are going to get anxious about so many things that you're anxious about now. Everything will become a threat because you've wired your amygdala and it's becoming really reactive. Mm-hmm. I think we are very quick to say we're depressed when actually we've just probably got ourselves in a hole, like I say, where we've not got out, we've not really had anything great. Yeah. We've not done anything good for any brain chemicals. Like, everybody would feel like that if they didn't do it.
Yeah.
ADHD, again, I think a lot of people are quick to go, well, I can't think on one thing, I'm just, everything's important, everything's priority. Yeah. Again, I think that's a generation thing. I think, learning to step back and do one thing at a time, and planning and choosing where to put your focus massively helps for people that are overwhelmed by everything. Mm-hmm. And I think we overcomplicate everything anyway. Yeah, I 100%
agree with that.
Absolutely. Like, if something's simple, we have to go and add something over the top of it, and I don't know why. It's just so it makes it a little bit more awkward for us.
A little bit more exciting, a little bit more like, ooh, look how much I'm doing. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that everybody's labelling themselves for the wrong reasons, but I do believe that if you think that you are fall into one of these categories, just try changing your lifestyle just a little bit. Yeah. For 30 days, just be consistent for 30 days. And then tell me how you feel then. Do you feel like you can think better? Yeah. Do you feel like you're less anxious? Do you feel a little bit happier? Because we're quick to medicate. Yeah. I would agree. That's not curing the problem. It's just putting a plaster over.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, and he was like saying, oh mate, I'm in a little bit of a hole, I need your self-help advice and all this, which is great. Like, I love being the self-help friend, do you know what I mean, who's supposedly got all the answers. But I was like, all right, okay, so what is your day-to-day like? And he's like, well, I'm unemployed, I don't really do much, I watch a bit of telly and stuff. And I'm like, and you're asking me why you feel shit? And I'm like, mate, like, if you just took stock of what's going on, like, do you know what I mean? And that, like, I mean, granted, there was some drama and all this other stuff in his life, but I was like, just start with one thing. I just gave, do you know what I mean? But you feel almost like patronizing, giving out the basic of, like, go out for a walk, go to the gym, eat some good food, and you sound patronizing, but it fucking that's where to start for most people. Yeah. But it's just like, in terms of the self-diagnosis thing, like, you're quick to label yourself with ADHD. I think people are quick to do that, and I'm like, granted, maybe now we're seeing more cases of it coming up, but I'm also like, a lot of people, I think, just don't know how to prioritize.
Yeah, switch off.
The problem is priorities, right? I say this, not everything can be a priority, but everyone thinks everything else is a priority.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you make a list of what is actually going on in your life and say, what needs to be doing? What do I actually need to do? What do I want to get done? And then what could maybe I give to somebody else to do? Yeah. Which is my favorite thing, right? Because I was really busy. I've just took a friend of mine just said, look, like, I'll do some of these edits for you, like the reels and stuff now. I don't do them anymore. It's freed up several nights of my week. But I was like, when I made a list, and I was like, okay, this is stressing me out. What can I do with this? Do I need to do it? Do I want to do it? Or can I delegate it to somebody else? So I delegated it, and guess what? I felt way better.
Yeah, it's one of those things though, we don't like to ask for help though.
Yeah, but why? Why do you think that is?
I don't know whether that's...
Do you think it's pride?
Possibly.
Ego, maybe?
Yeah. But yeah, there'll be days, like with Mum and then Ben and then working, and then something will happen with Mum, and like one of my friends will turn around and she'll go, why didn't you ask me? And it's almost like you don't want to encroach on other people. Mm-hmm. It's like we've got this very odd thing where, so I fall across to that as well.
Yeah, and my attention span was going haywire because I was overwhelmed with everything. And I was like, I started to think that. I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about his diagnosis of ADHD. He's like, maybe you have it too. And I started thinking, I'm like, oh shit, maybe I've got it. Yeah. Maybe I do have it because I'm overwhelmed and I like to do this and this, and I talk a million miles an hour and I've got to do that. But I was just like, no, I'm just overwhelming myself with, I'm going from my laptop to my phone to my laptop to talking to this to that. And I'm like, no wonder I think I've got a problem with my attention or I'm hyperactive. It's because I'm just bombarded with so much information.
It's funny you should say that. I watched a podcast a few weeks back. Mm-hmm. A very well-known lady in ADHD, and I literally come off and I thought, well, it's just diagnosed everybody I know, including me.
But that's what I mean, though. It's like this, that you can accumulate all this, like, all these symptoms, and you go, shit, maybe I've got this. Or there's one TikTok, it'll just set you off, and it'll go, do you have ADHD? These are the common symptoms. And you're like, maybe I do.
Maybe I do.
And it's like, do you have anxiety? This is the symptoms. And it's like, oh shit, maybe I've got. But do you know, it's so easy to assume you've got everything. That's the problem, I think, with where TikToks and where Instagrams and Facebooks. It's so easy to just say, well, I've got this. But it almost uses it as a crutch as well, I think, as well. I
think it is. They said the other day that so we have 3 times much more input and new data that our brain's learning, 3 times more than we did in the 1960s.
Wow. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
And then we expect to cope all right. No. And funny enough, we went, like I say, we did a in-person sleep masterclass this week, back end of this week. And I'd said to one lady, the thing is, our brains haven't evolved since we were cavemen. Mm-hmm. And she was like, what? So our brains haven't changed since then? The world's changed. I was like, did you expect your brain to change? And she was like, well. I was like, you just expect your brain and your body just to keep adapting to this new modern world and this environment and expect everything to be all right. Well,
people say to me, I've heard that thing where they think people are going to have weird dents in their fingers from holding phones. I'm like, we're done. We're not going to evolve anymore. Like, the only reason we evolved was to survive.
Yeah.
We're all right now. We're not getting killed by tigers and stuff. We won. Well. We won, guys. Human race, we won. There was other species of hominid on the planet. We killed and ate them all. We won. You know what I mean?
Fine.
We won. Yeah. One of the things that always that got me into evolutionary psychology, and I'll share this with you as well because I recently read it again, was a study that really stumped me on how robotic and wired humans are. And I'll get your take on it. So this was a study done by if I can see without my microphone on my face. And it was done by a guy called Dr. David Buss. And what he did was he studied the mating habits of 37 different cultures around the world just to see what effect it had on different cultures. Like, these are people from, like, the UK. Then you've got people in indigenous tribes who have never seen a magazine or a phone or anything in their lives, right? And they studied them, right? And what they found was, interestingly, they found that women favored men who could accumulate more resources than men did for women.
Okay.
Makes sense? So women preferred men that could accumulate resources. Men didn't seem to care, right? Men preferred younger women, whereas women preferred, on average, an age gap of 3 years older.
Right, okay.
They found that virginity was more highly sought after by men than it was by women. Mm-hmm. They found that women preferred the more ambitious man, whereas men didn't care about a woman's ambition. Men were more concerned with physical attractiveness than women. And also found that there was I don't have the exact figures, but there's a correlation between women preferred a certain hip to shoulder ratio. They preferred broader shoulders in men, and also men preferred a certain hip to waist ratio in women. But the funny thing was, they were so close together, some of them almost identical from each of these 37 different cultures.
Right.
And what that showed them was, they were actually surprised by this in the study, and they were saying, well, it just shows how across the world, the evolutionary wiring is still there. And people forget that we've had 15 years of Facebook and 100,000 years before that of evolution. We've had 15, 16 years of Instagram and modern magazines of body image and stuff. But the truth is, we are wired to like and to do certain things.
Yeah.
The best example is people think they've got as much free will, right? This is I've got free will. It's like, okay, go and eat your own turd. Go and eat your own. Oh, you can't? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had free will. You know what I mean? And it's mad, is it? But the truth is, it changed the way, looking at all this, it changed the way I saw people.
Yeah.
It changed the way I saw people's decision making. It changed the way I saw people and potential partners. It changed how I just saw the human race in general.
Yeah.
So knowing what you know about the brain, knowing what you know about how we've evolved, how we're basically just these little meat robots walking around, has it changed how you see people?
Yes.
What was the biggest way it impacted the way you saw people? Did it change how you spoke to people at all?
Yes, because I think hugely we kind of make excuses for ourselves and for other people. So instantly I just stopped making those excuses for me and for other people. So if somebody, like you said with your friend and that, I won't be, well, maybe tomorrow will be better or anything like that. It's like, we need to do something about it because it's not going to get any better. I do think now, I've realised massively now how much we run on autopilot without even thinking, how much behaviour, everything we say, even to what we wear, what we eat, is so automatically done now that I just think people no longer want to get out of their comfort zones or try something new because it's so easy to be in that lovely comfort zone, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I look at people now and I think, it's one of those things where it used to frustrate me, not so much now because obviously people have got their own choices and that's great, but people are so much more capable than they're doing right now. And even if it's somebody that's not doing much, they're so much capable of doing so much more. And for the people that are hustling are still so much capable. They just need to learn how to work with their brain.
Yeah.
So I do see now when I talk to people, I can often say, oh, they're running in that function of the brain, they're running on autopilot. And then you can hear somebody else talk and it's like, oh, they're running on the prefrontal cortex. That sounds nice. So, yeah, it's massively changed how I've seen people. But interestingly enough, on another masterclass I did a few weeks ago, there was one chap there and I'd been talking about the mental health increase and the Alzheimer's increase. And he says, well, why is that? He said, I know we've had COVID. So he was probably about mid-70s. He says, we had none of this. What is it? And I'd said just automatically, I think people aren't learnt how to cope with difficult situations now and we're just running around. But when I got home, I thought that's not actually true because I don't believe at all that this generation is harder work than generations before. We've still got the same emotions. We haven't gained any more. We're still exactly the same. I just think now life has become that easy for us and that automatic that we're just all just not aware of anything that we're capable of or how to change it. And I think that's what it boils down to. Yeah,
I would probably agree. I read somewhere that apparently the further we get from a traditional survival scenario, the more absolutely, for lack of a better term, retarded we all get.
Yeah, I just think it's horrific. And then, like I say, I just look at all those statistics going up and I think you can just see why. And it is a little bit like why the government's not shouting about it. You might go into the GP and it might say, go for a quick walk for 10 minutes. Everybody in the waiting room is just sitting there going, yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, give us some pills.
I think noticing how automatic everything is. Like I say, to what we eat, we go and pick up in the supermarket, to what we're watching on telly, to social media. I think we are a lazy generation, but I mean that in a nice way. So I think just getting out there and waking up a bit and doing something new and pushing yourself a little bit, so good for your health, now and the future.
Yeah. That was my last question was, what advice would you give the audience listening in order to take control of their mind a bit more? But you just literally summed that up. You jumped ahead. You read my mind. I didn't realize that was possible. Neuroscientists can read your mind, guys. Well, listen, Amy, it's been a fantastic episode. I've learned a lot. I can't believe I got stumped in the middle from all that information. I was like, like my brain was like, you need to like comprehend this somehow. But listen, Amy, where can people follow you? Where can people work with you? Where can people find your content?
Okay, so I am on Facebook and Instagram. If you have a look for Mindset and Neuro Mastery. So on there are links to a sleep masterclass. So if you do struggle sleeping or you're not getting 7 hours, I recommend that one so much. It's full of practical advice and full of science. I've also got a stress management masterclass on there as well, and you can also work with me in a group. We do a 28-day program, and that's all about getting rid of overwhelm, setting goals, and just having a happier life now.
Sounds good. I'm going to have to sign up for that as well.
Yeah,
fantastic, guys. Well, well, thank you very much for listening, guys. As always, please leave us the 5-star review. None of this 4-star rubbish. It's 5 stars or leave. Thank you very much, guys. And I will see you all in the very next episode. Until then, take care.